I'm Alad Gilo, one of the co-founders of Reach. Cold Email Hot Takes is a mini video series in which we talk to inspiring sales leaders about their approach to outbound sales. This week's episode, we're honored to be joined by Seth DeHart. Can you quickly introduce yourself, Seth?
Yeah, I'll try to live up to the hype of being honored. I'm Seth DeHart. I'm a sales advisor, venture partner at Ep.1 in Berlin. I've been in sales for 20 years, made my way up as an SDR to an account executive to a head of sales to a VP of sales. And now I'm fortunate to advise B2B SaaS companies full time. And um, excited to be with you, man.
That's awesome. Actually, one of the reasons we really wanted to have you on is because you're advising so many different companies, and so you have a unique insight into especially how SaaS companies are approaching outbound sales. And so this should be super interesting. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you was, since people are so overwhelmed by the amount of cold emails they receive, I'm curious, kind of, what are some of the guiding principles that you use to stand out from the crowd, or when you
Yeah,
advise your companies?
I mean, personalization, right? I mean, I think when I see companies struggling, it's often that they just try to scale things and it turns into spam. And whether it's calling without a reason, LinkedIn spam messages, we all get them. And you can tell when it's just like you've done no research. I think that just kills any chance of communication and it makes it easy to ignore. So when you do a deep level of personalization, it doesn't mean it needs to be an enormous amount of time. uh, it just triggers interest and shows that you did your homework and gets people engaged, which is the kind of the first step in a sales cycle.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how few people are actually personalizing. Like the data is so clear on how positive the results are, especially on response rate. And people still aren't doing it. And I'm
It's
curious, are
hard,
you?
I
It is
guess.
hard. It's time consuming, right? I guess it is. It can be a massive bottleneck when you want to hit those numbers. Are there types of personalization that you think are particularly effective? Like, are there sources of information, whether it's LinkedIn profile or website or news or things like that, that you tend to have as your fallbacks?
Yeah, I kind of look at it almost like a research checklist, right? So first and foremost is people care about themselves the most, and so if you can personalize it to the person, something unique about them, something you've done research about them. I think that's obviously the best version or the most effective way to communicate or personalize. Second, the company, right? So something unique about the company or their role at the company. It's kind of less about them, but more about their job and what the company's doing. And then obviously industry type content or type of tools that they're using, right? Kind of as you zoom out. So I think about like super micro level to the person and then kind of zooming out from there, I think becomes extremely, you know, is kind of the framework that I work. And so if you find something, it's almost like I said, a research checklist. You go in, you kind of go through those different steps, whether it's LinkedIn, searching the internet, whatever it might be, and starting to gather up and kind of build a bit of a case of why you're reaching out. And I think it takes a lot of time. And that's why people go to spam, but you can get better and better and better and faster at doing it. So you end up, like I said, having a checklist.
Right. And it often doesn't take that much, right? Like it can be as simple as an icebreaker, a couple lines. Like it doesn't have to be, you don't need to like overly
There's
personalize
a
the whole
huge
email.
difference between showing that you're actually reaching out to me versus sending a message to just generic to everybody,
Correct.
right? So to your point,
Correct.
yeah, it's a like just show you did a tiny bit of homework is a huge delta between that and just let me just spam you with the same message to everybody because
Exactly.
we've all gotten that.
Exactly. So one of the other things I wanted to ask you was, a lot of the people that we see talking about sales, especially outbound sales, are really talking about this concept of having to add value when reaching out and before pushing for a call, right? So there's this kind of divide when people say, "Yeah, push for the call immediately, push for the meeting immediately." Other people say, "Wait, you need to, add value, sort of engage them in
Yeah,
conversation." Are you Do you agree with that? Are there ways that you try to add value when you're reaching out, to kind of establish that before asking for a meeting?
yeah. So maybe I'm old school, but I'm always asking for a meeting. Like that's my call to action. But at the same time, I think adding value obviously is like a huge component of not only opening a conversation and getting through a sales cycle, but closing a deal. Like, ultimately, you're selling something that adds value. The best is both. And what I mean by that is if you can demonstrate that the product has positioned you in a way that you're an expert, and you have expert insights that the person you're pitching may want to understand and learn. Maybe it's about other companies in their space and what they're using, what they're doing. If you can use that as a hook to get into that meeting, I think that's the best of both worlds. I think if you just say, hey, I want to do a meeting to pitch you my product, right? Even if you have a great personalization, I think that falls a little bit flat. If you can, on the other side, if you're emailing them to say, I have this great bit of content, I thought you might like it. I like that, except it just takes longer. And unless you can demonstrate a higher conversion rate, then all you're doing is kind of extending your sales cycle from initial contact to close. And I think the job of every good sales rep or good sales leader is trying to shorten sales cycles, right? So, I mean, obviously increase deal sizes and increase conversion rates as well. But like, I don't like to do anything that's going to potentially lengthen a sales cycle unnecessarily. So again, if I can pitch the product in a way that demonstrates that we're experts and that you'll want to talk to me or the sales rep and that you'll learn from that, then I'm adding value or demonstrating that by taking a meeting, you're going to learn and add value in that way. And that's obviously a good way to kick off any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I think I've heard you say in the past is it's really effective to reference some of your clients, right? So you can basically show that you are an expert by referencing existing customers who are benefiting from your solution, and therefore their pain are being solved. So that similar pain that your future customer might be dealing with. So you're kind of establishing social proof at the same time of kind of demonstrating that you are in a position to add value.
I'm a huge advocate of like starting very niche, right? So they talk about the TAM. I always joke, like, not the TAM that you lied to your investors about, but the TAM we can actually service right now, right? Not just the entire universe who will buy our product someday. Like, yeah, maybe someday. But today we need to start with like the ideal customer profile. But even within the ideal customer profile, it's like, what is an even higher likelihood of success? I kind of equate to like shooting fish in a barrel. You know, it's hard enough to sell, especially in the early days with many of the companies that I'm working with that are not well established. So if you can get really tight with a niche that you're referencing other companies that know each other, they want to know what the other ones are doing. And they're like, well, if they're using it, I want to use it. I work with a company that sells to skate shops and brands that's offered to skate shops. And so there's not that many. Certainly not brands that sell to them, and not like decent sized brands. And so they all know each other. So as soon as we started referencing some, they're like, oh, I know those guys. Yeah, those guys are using you. Oh, I want to talk to you. Like, think about that. I don't even know what you do, but if they're using you, I want to talk to you. And that's kind of that adding value. And so I see too often companies not strongly like referencing companies that are relevant. Right. And I think the key word is relevant, right? Like, it's got to be a company that they know, ideally. Yeah. It's not necessarily possible all the time, but that's what, if you have it, you should certainly include it in those conversations or email outreaches.
Absolutely. One of the things we've seen in terms of sort of disagreement in the outbound emailing space is sort of the range of that we see in terms of the number of contacts or points of contact that people will use when reaching out, right? Yeah. So some people will put people into a cadence that could be 20 touch points, others maybe even more. I'm curious what you think is optimal. Is there such a thing as being overly persistent in your outreach?
Since we've known each other for a long time, and I think chill down, dude, is a good one. We both, Eli and I know a young man who was extremely aggressive with his outreach, and his cadence had, I don't know how many touches, but they were every day. After like the third or fourth day, you got a response that just said, chill down, dude. I'm getting all your emails. So I'd say, it's probably a little too aggressive. I think it's like, I look at prospecting certainly into a specific a person, going after a persona or a person is almost like account-based marketing, in the sense of hit them where they are. So it's LinkedIn, email, phone calls, maybe other engagements. The skate shop company I was referencing, or the SaaS that sells to skate shops, those skateboard companies are all on Instagram. So they connect with them on Instagram, and they're using that as a medium. I haven't seen a lot of B2B SaaS companies selling through Instagram, but with the right tone, they're starting to engage there. So get them where they are. So if once you know where they are, then you can kind of figure out how many touches should be in your sequence. And so maybe it's, should you have phone calls in there? Is it worth the time, right? Maybe I work with another company in Denmark that's only phone calls. They just call all day and they book a ton of meetings. It's like, all right, well, why would we try to email if that's it? So I think it's unique to your product market fit. And then, typical best practices is LinkedIn, email, calling. And so you sequence those out over several days. So maybe it's every day or 2 or 3, you hit them with one of those, right? So it's maybe you email and you call, email, LinkedIn the first day. You could do that. And then 3 days later, if they've accepted your LinkedIn request or you're using email, you can message them again. And then next you could, have the email running on a cadence in the background while you're calling. So I think maybe it's a long-winded way of saying maybe like 12 touches. So maybe 4 calls, 4 emails, 4 LinkedIn, somewhere around there.
And I'm curious, do you believe in a breakup email, or are you of the idea that you can kind of keep it open-ended and keep touching them over a longer period of time? And maybe touch a weird way to put it, but basically.
No. I love it. I could go either way. So I like a breakup email that has intent. I don't like a breakup email that has like a funny gift that's like, I've tried a lot and like, now we're breaking up. I like I've reached out several times. It appears that, you're not the right person. I'll reach out to someone else at the organization. I love that as a breakup because you're basically creating work for someone else. They know that person, because they haven't gotten back to you, knows that you're going to be going after other people at their organization. And if they are the right person, it's going to come back to them anyway. I like that as a breakup email. On the other hand, a best practice that I've also seen is it goes from kind of outbound prospecting to nurturing. And typically nurturing is done by the marketing, right? With kind of email marketing. But there's something to be said about an email touch once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks of some like added value content to stay top of mind. Because unless you have a sophisticated marketing and sales department, where as soon as they're done the cadence, it goes right into a marketing nurture campaign, which isn't that sophisticated, but it takes systems and resources and people to run it, and content to serve up. Why not run your own nurture campaigns? I mean, you could send a breakup email and have a nurture campaign. Hey, I haven't heard back from you. I'm gonna reach out to other people, and then 2 weeks later to say, hey, thought you might find this interesting. Here's this white paper or piece of content.
That's true. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. That's true. I like that approach of kind of requiring them to kind of be the point of defense for the organization. So either they're going to take the call with you, or they're going to be direct with you and respond to you.
I haven't heard you back, so I'm going to email everyone else at the company to find out who the right person is, because I thought it was you. So
yeah, you put it on them. You kind of put the ball in their court in terms of having to either respond to you very, very candidly, or say, yeah, that is the right person. You should reach
and maybe they should just respond and say, we're not interested. But if I email your CEO and the CEO says, hey, this is something you need to explore, now you're taking a meeting with a sales guy because you didn't respond to my email originally. So
exactly.
So it's not really a breakup. It's a redirect.
Yeah,
I guess,
it's a redirect, right? No, but it's good because it's not mutually exclusive. You can still do the nurturing, which I like. So as a final question on the scale of sort of pitching in your first email to starting a conversation, where would you say you fall in your approach? Because we've seen a lot of discussion around people saying like, don't pitch in the first email. It's that's dead. That's the old way of doing it. Now you have to engage them, kind of start a conversation, and only once you build enough trust, push for something more aggressive.
I mean, I think the definition of pitch is probably where people get stuck. Again, if you're not personalizing it all and you're just kind of like spamming out this value proposition that may or may not land, it feels that way. And I think that
Right.
turns people off. That's easy for me to ignore. And I get those all the time. And I just they don't warrant a response. But also if I don't know what you do, I also get that too. I get inbounds or not inbounds. I get prospected to, and I respond. I'm like, exactly what is it that you do or that you're looking for? Like I'm confused.
Right.
Now, obviously, I'm talking to you about on cold email hot takes because like this is a topic that we both obviously care deeply about. But like most people don't, so they're not responding to you to be like, so what is it exactly that you do and why are you like what? So like I think it goes back to some of the points we made earlier about like you got to present your value proposition in a way that like is relevant to them with references and ideally something that they're curious about and want to learn more about so that they can be, engage with you and become educated, right? And you're adding value in that way. So like I think if you don't pitch me, whatever, like at least present your value proposition to me. I'm like, I don't know what. I literally just emailed a guy this morning, or I was on LinkedIn, and he was talking about an event, and he was just like telling me about this event, and I was like, and so what exactly do you want me to say? Like what? I don't understand. What's the CTA for me? So like,
to me it feels like
I got to know what you're doing. If I don't know what you're doing, like,
Exactly.
why am I going to have a conversation with you? So there needs to be some pitch in there, so at least know what you're talking about.
I'm of the idea that at least enough to answer the like why, why care, right? Like if somebody can't immediately understand like why should I care about what you're sending to me, then you
100%.
failed on some level, right?
But I would
So
say
like
I'd take it
pitch
even a little bit
enough for them.
further. Yeah, like a little bit further because it's like want to increase revenue. It's like, well, yeah, but like if I don't have any, right? Like if I don't know what you're pitching, then I'm not going to take a meeting with you to be like, I get those too. It's like interested in increasing revenue for your business. Let's schedule a 15-minute call. It's like, what? Like, I don't even have a clue what you do. So I need to have some, I agree with you. Don't over pitch, but like, tell me what you do.
Exactly. No, I agree. Well, this has been super interesting. Thank you so much, Seth, for joining us, and we'll hope to have you on again as a
hopefully
as a
I lived
follow-up.
up to your high praise. So thank you for having
me. You have. It's been great.
You're a salesman.
All right. Take care.
See you.